Okay, here we go. This is Garrett. With God's help, I want to further expose some sinister evil going on in the world, but especially in the United States, in the NFL, the National Football League. Now, this is going to be one of the longer videos that I do from time to time. I'm going to ask you, please be patient. I'm going to be talking about all different kinds of things. So let's be patient. And let me get started. And once again, be patient because I'm going to slowly lead you to the sinister evil part in 5 to 10 minutes from now. I want you children of God to know there is a disease called CTE. Those are the initials. It stands for chronic traumatic encephalopathy. It is a progressive degenerate brain disease. Let me read to you some of the effects of CTE. Remember, be patient. We'll get to the NFL part and the demonic evil going on shortly. Some of the effects of CTE are massive mood and behavioral problems, lack of control, impulsive behavior, aggression and aggressiveness, depression, paranoia, problems thinking, memory loss, confusion, impaired judgment or bad judgment or not having the ability to make simple decisions, dementia, being irritable, headaches, problems in the head, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, suicidal feelings, etc., etc., etc. Those are some of the effects of this disease, CTE. Now, what causes CTE in a man or a woman, boy or girl? Repeatedly getting hit in the head. For example, boxers are getting hit in the head all the time. Wrestlers are having their head damaged all the time, whether on the mat or with elbows or inadvertent fists. Hits to the head are what cause and what start CTE in a man's brain or woman's brain. Now, let's get to the NFL. CTE was discovered by a Nigerian doctor named Dr. Omalu. He discovered it when the famous Pittsburgh Steelers center, Mike Webster, he died. He killed himself. Technically, he died of a heart attack, but he was electrocuting himself. Dr. Omalu is the one that did the autopsy, but he realized something strange was going on. Now, this was approximately 15 years ago. Remember, about 15 years ago, approximately. What happened is he uncovered a brand new form of brain damage, of brain disease, and he uncovered this with his own money. You see, the morgue would not pay for this type of an autopsy. So Dr. Omalu paid with his own money to do an extensive, expensive autopsy on Mike Webster's brain, and this is where he discovered this brand new disease. Now, I want you to know, even 50 years ago, 75 years ago, there were boxing trainers who used to call this being punch drunk. So when the boxers would get when they would get hit in their head a lot with jabs and punches and right hooks, they become punch drunk. And as the years go by, the boxers were acting weird and strange and nobody knew who it was. Some trainers were calling this punch drunkenness. But Dr. Omalu gave it the term CTE. Those are the initials for the much longer word. And this doctor is the first one to find it. Now we're going to slowly get into the evil of the NFL. Their sinister workings and everything else. And I pray that God is going to bless you with this. Dr. Omalu, many years ago, tried to contact the NFL to notify them of this brand new disease, but the NFL wanted nothing to do with it. They didn't want to hear what he had to say. They didn't want to see the medical facts. They rebuked him, and it got worse and worse. Now, Dr. Omalu and their family started getting death threats on the phone. Would the NFL go down to this type of dirty fighting? Let's wait a few minutes and continue to talk about them. Dr. Omalu was getting professional threats that he might lose his career. Other doctors were calling him, working with the NFL, threatening him and calling him bad names. He was being abused and he was being targeted. He was purposely being targeted to be discredited because the NFL didn't want to look at the facts, look at the blood, look at the brain damage, look at the brand new disease. Let's continue because it gets much worse. Now, not only did Mike Webster kill himself, but now some other NFL players also committed suicide. Some of them in a very strange way. One of the ex-NFL players drank a gallon of antifreeze. When Dr. Omalu got the body and got permission to do this kind of an autopsy, he had to pay for the autopsy himself again with his own money. This player also had the brand new disease, CTE, in his brain. The NFL didn't want to hear about it. They approached Paul Tagliabue, the ex-NFL commissioner. Science was coming out about CTE. They were rejecting it. They were having meetings about it. And this is what the NFL did. The NFL hired the same legal group of attorneys that also defended the tobacco industry. When the tobacco industry was being sued for millions and millions of dollars, when they were lying about the cigarettes, telling us there was no damage, nothing bad for our lungs, no problems with the heart, the blood, and anything else, and they lied to us on purpose, well, the NFL hired the same legal attorney firm. As evidence is coming out that this new disease might be real, guess what? Paul Tagliabue, he resigns. You see, the NFL, each team in the NFL has a team doctor. And these doctors have been covering up what the concussions have been doing to the NFL players. They've been covering this up. I'm not saying they're all guilty, but generally speaking, they've been covering this up. In the past, when players had a concussion, the NFL team doctor might give them some smelling salt and throw them right back into the game, even right after the concussion. Or they might give them one type of all different kinds of semi-illegal shots and pills and put the NFL player right back in the game, not caring about the player, not caring about his health or his wife and kids at home or much of anything else. Let's continue because it gets worse. Now we get a new NFL commissioner, Roger Goodell, and by the way, he's still the commissioner as of right now. So he calls hearings to be held on what these concussions do and what CTE might be. These hearings were rigged, they were falsified, and they were nothing more than demonic deceptions being played out. The reason why they call these hearings is because this brand new disease, CTE, was starting to show up in the newspapers and possibly on television, on news channels. People were starting to talk about it. So to try to simmer all of this down, to try to cover it all up, Roger Goodell starts calling together meetings and commissions, but they were rigged. They invited Dr. Omalu to speak at these commissions and at these meetings, but at the last second, they ordered that he would not be allowed to speak. He would not be allowed to show any of his evidence or clinical research or much of anything else. But let me tell you something. It's going to get even worse. I want to show you what the NFL has been doing now. Dave Duerson is an ex-NFL player, and he's now running the Players Association, the Players Rep. He is in on it. The Players Association is in on it, as far as at least their leaders, not wanting to hear about this, not wanting to look at any evidence, totally closed their mind. They didn't care about the NFL players coming down with CTE. Once again, let's do a recap. The reason why the NFL players are getting CTE is because of all of the head trauma that they get when they're blocking and tackling and running with the football, getting hit in the head on collisions. Even Dave Duerson was in on it and helped to cover the entire thing up. Now what happens is a few more months go by and we have more NFL players killing themselves. More tests are done, and now CTE, this brand new brain disease, is becoming a fact with clinical evidence. Dr. Omalu's trying to put pressure on the NFL, trying to go public. They wrote some journals in medical magazines and medical journals, and they got published, and it's becoming much more famous. Now the NFL is panicking. They're absolutely panicking. So do you know what the NFL does now? They contact the FBI, and the FBI, one of the most crooked, demonic organizations in the history of the United States, comes and attacks Dr. Omalu, but especially his boss at the morgue. They get pressured. They get false charges trumped against them. They get blackmailed and threatened by the FBI. Does the NFL have power to do this? You better believe it. The NFL is an extremely powerful mafia run by old, mainly Caucasian men who have formed a powerful sports mafia that's got to be connected with the Congress, the cities, legislation in all the cities, city managers, the FBI also, powerful law firms, the television networks, and on and on. This is a powerful mafia, and they don't care about their players. Let's continue. The NFL is doing their own studies on concussions now. They're doing studies on monkeys and dogs and crash test dummies. That's right. This is the NFL. They come up with conclusions that concussions are not a problem for the players, that they cause no damage, they do nothing bad to the brain, they do nothing bad to the body, and they do nothing bad to the player's health. Now, they know these are lies. They know they're lying. They know they're deceiving Congress and the news agencies and the sports fans all over the USA. They're doing this on purpose because they don't want to lose any money selling tickets to their next game. They don't want anything to come between them and their dollar bills. So they are faking the information, lying about it, covering it up, even though most of them knew the truth. And by the way, this goes all the way up to the top, to the NFL commissioner, the players' union, all the way down to the team owners, the team doctors, and the team assistants. They all covered it up. They're all guilty about this. Let's continue. We have NFL players pulling their own teeth out, becoming homeless, electrocuting themselves, shooting themselves in the head, shooting themselves in the chest, drinking gallons of antifreeze, threatening to kill their girlfriends, wives, and children, racing out in cars and crashing on the freeway, beating up their girlfriends, doing drugs, committing crimes, and even committing crimes of murder. And guess what? When they are tested, they all have CTE, including, I believe, the famous murderer Aaron Hernandez. One of the most famous NFL players of all time, Junior Seau, the incredible linebacker for the San Diego Chargers, he was tested. Oh, by the way, Junior Seau killed himself. I should lower my voice. That's really sad. Junior killed himself. He had CTE. Now, let's continue. I'm going to change the topic a little bit, but I'll come back to the CTE and give you some mind-boggling statistics. But for a couple minutes, I want you to know I've been addicted to sports, to watching sports and playing sports for most of my life. I know everything about football, basketball, baseball, hockey, and boxing. I often wondered, how come the NFL didn't have better gear? How come they didn't have better helmets? I used to lay in bed meditating on that. How come there has been no change to the NFL gear in the last 20 to 30 years? Why are the helmets that the players use right now, basically speaking, the same technology that they were 30 years ago? Why are the shoulder pads and the thigh pads and everything else that an NFL player wears, why are they using the same technology in the protective gear that they had, say, 30 years ago? This doesn't make sense. When we look at cars 30 years ago compared to today, they're much better now. When we look at shoes 30 years ago compared to the running shoes we have today, compared to the hiking boots, compared to the work shoes we have today with the steel toes, they're much better today. When we look at computers from 20 years ago compared to what we have today, or televisions, or radios, or our cell phones, Everything, and I mean everything, is much better today. Now, what happened to the NFL gear? How is it the NFL doesn't have space-age technology gear for their players to wear? How is it that an NFL helmet, a college football helmet, a high school helmet doesn't have space-age technology in it to protect the human player? How is this possible? And I used to think about this all the time. Let me tell you something. The USA and engineering and plastic aluminum type companies and manufacturers, whether in China, South Korea, it doesn't matter, the USA, they should have came up with braces for the NFL players' knees. The NFL player's knee is the most targeted part of the body to be damaged. You have multiple players being injured every single NFL season all over their body, especially the knee. Why is it with the technology that we have now, there are no lightweight braces made for the knee, a brace that the NFL player would not even feel because it's so comfortable? And it would be made out of the most advanced polymers, the most advanced types of aluminums and metals. It would be so lightweight, you would not even know it's on your knee. Yet, when you come to get tackled, when you go to make a tackle, when you fall down, when you're being flipped, when you're on the line of scrimmage, the bracket or this type of bracelet type thing on your knee and on your elbows would lock in place with its polymers and plastics and completely protect you. Do you know how simple it is to make this kind of equipment in 2017? It's never been done. I have watched studies on the internet of some other high technology NFL gear that was being made and manufactured. It never came into the NFL. There is a lot of evil going on here. Okay, I took a little sidetrack into the gear. I want to show you that part of the evil going on, how we're using prehistoric caveman gear still in the year 2017. Now I want to give you some mind-boggling statistics. Listen to this. 111 ex-NFL football players were examined for CTE. 111. Do you know how many had CTE? 110. That's right, 110. The NFL will have websites up on Google claiming that maybe 15 or 17% of the NFL players have CTE. Let me tell you what Dr. Omalu says. Dr. Omalu estimates that 90% of the NFL players in the world have CTE. 90%. Now it gets even worse. Now what I'm about to tell you is going to break your heart. Because you get CTE brain damage as your head is traumatized, your brain, if about 90% of the NFL players have CTE, that means approximately 50% of all college football players are getting CTE. But it gets even worse. That means that approximately 20% of all high school football players are contracting CTE brain disease. But it gets even worse. The children's football leagues like Pop Warner, where they're making tackles and falling down, and they're wearing prehistoric helmets and prehistoric football gear. The CTE is starting in your children who are not only playing football, but who are boxing, wrestling, playing hockey, and soccer. You know, in soccer, many times the soccer player practices hitting the ball with their head. This is a common strike in soccer. When you hit the ball with your head, your brain, which is loose inside a liquid, inside of your head, gets bounced around real hard. And that damage, that trauma, starts CTE brain damage. This is happening in children all over the world who either play soccer, boxing, ice hockey, especially wrestling and football especially. Yes, your children who are playing football are slowly getting CTE every time their head is traumatized. Every single time. And you have to ask yourself, how many times would your head get traumatized in an NFL game? Are you kidding? Are you kidding? Let me explain something again. Your brain is loose inside of your head, floating around in liquid. Every time your head gets jabbed real hard to the left, right, up, or down, your brain slams against the wall of your cranium. It slams against the skull, and that's starting CTE. Are you starting to realize how big this is? How many football players have beaten up their girlfriends? How many have started taking drugs? How many have lost their memory? How many are really aggressive, threatening to kill their wives and children? How many pro wrestlers have beaten up their girlfriends? How many wrestlers have murdered their wives and or children? How many pro wrestlers have committed suicide? Basically speaking, when you catch CTE and it gets worse and worse as you continue to play football, you become more and more irrational, almost like you're under demonic attack. And you can freak out in aggressiveness. You can kill yourself in depression. You can rob liquor stores in very impulsive behavior. This is one of the secret killers, not only in the USA, but the rest of the world. I remember when I saw that Dr. Omalu was stating that most likely O.J. Simpson has a bad case of CTE brain damage. Because what Dr. Omalu did is he looked at O.J. Simpson's life, that irrational aggressiveness, the possibility of committing murders against family members, possibly against friends. This is not a video about O.J. I don't want to hear your politics. Dr. Omalu was looking at O.J. Simpson's life, stating that he was sure O.J. Simpson had CTE. What about Aaron Hernandez, who was doing drug deals and murdered possibly multiple people? He got caught. They sent him to the penitentiary. He killed himself in his jail cell. He was found to have CTE. Are you now starting to understand just how big this actually is? How many children play tackle football in the USA? How many children play tackle football in junior high and especially high school? They're contracting CTE brain damage. Young football players in high school who have died in some strange, ominous ways, were tested and found to have CTE. You can go on Google and check any of this out if you want to. Now, how many tens and tens and tens and hundreds of thousands of children are playing high school football in the USA and possibly in other countries, more or less in other countries, soccer, wrestling, and boxing? How many? They're catching CTE because of the brain trauma. Let's go up now. How many college football players are there every year? They're catching CTE. It's going to basically have them freak out over the next 10, 20, 30 years of their life, committing crimes, killing people, threatening the life of their mom and dad, threatening their little daughter to strangle her to death, committing suicide, terrible depression, becoming homeless, losing all your money, robbing banks, robbing liquor stores, committing petty crimes, losing your mind, not being able to think anymore. Are you seeing how big this is now? Now, most of the college football players never make the NFL because they're not good enough. They now have CTE as they go back home, move in with their mom and dad, and have to go look for a job. CTE can be one of the secret killers in the USA and the world behind bank robberies, drug deals, beatings, knife fights, suicides especially, murders, rapes, dementia. But it gets even worse. Now, I'm not an expert in the medical field, but the CTE brain damage brings in effects like Alzheimer's at a much, much younger age. If you want to study this on the internet, you'll read stories about how some of the ex-NFL football players did not even recognize their wives or mom or dad anymore and didn't even know who they were. And this is being covered up. By who? By the NFL. This is being purposely covered up by the NFL, and they're going to have to answer to this. And I'm asking you a few things. Would you boycott the NFL from now on? Could we stay away from buying their merchandise? Could we stay away from their TV channels? Could we stay away from buying their tickets and going to their games? I want you to understand something. These NFL owners are so arrogant and so satanic and so demonic. I'm not saying all of them. I'm not saying everybody. They actually think that their NFL Mafia League is bigger than God, and they have said so on multiple occasions. They have boasted about how millions of Americans used to go to church on Sunday. Now they don't go anymore. They stay home and they watch NFL games. Can you name one thing that has destroyed church attendance on a Sunday any more than the NFL football games? Could you name even one thing? Possibly not. You see, the NFL having their games on Sunday has some sinister evil behind it, behind the planning, behind the scheduling, behind the organization, behind the entire mafia that controls this sports game. And to cap it all off, they have known about CTE and concussion damage for a long time, and they purposely cover it up. Let me explain why. If CTE actually came out into the news all over the USA from the East Coast to the West Coast, do you know what would happen? Moms and dads in every single city are going to stop their children from playing football. If you think the NFL isn't terrified about that, you are drop dead wrong. And when the moms and dads stop their children from playing football, the Pop Warner leagues all over the nation are going to go bankrupt and close up. The high school football teams are going to have a lack of players, and the players that they have won't be nearly as good as they used to be. Did you know LeBron James was good enough in football to be able to play football at a very high level? But his mom had the guts to say no. No. You can go play basketball. The high school football teams will have a lack of players and they won't be as good anymore. The college football recruiters won't have as many players to choose from anymore. The college football game will go down in quality, down in expertise, down in talent, and there will be a shortage of players. The NFL knows all about this 1,000 times better than I do. So do you know what they did in the USA? They have covered up CTE the very best they possibly could in their demonic agendas and their evil, sinister plans with their corrupted law firms and attorneys that they hire and that they use. And they have tried to shut down this vital information from moms and dads all over the country being able to learn about this brain disease. That is what they have done. And the result is they have caused brain damage in tens and tens, I was going to say tens of thousands. I want to say millions of people. Because when you count the children playing football, the high schoolers playing football, the college young men playing football, and the NFL players playing football, I would like to add that into the millions and millions who are walking around. These men, and sometimes, well, not really women, but these men are your neighbors. They are your police officers in some cases. They're your dentist. And they are having memory problems. And they cannot make good judgment anymore. And they are sick. And they don't know what is wrong. And when they go to the doctor, do you know what happens? Now they get put on powerful psychotropic pills. So the doctors and the pharmaceutical companies can make billions and billions of dollars off this entire mess that we're calling CTE and brain damage and concussions. This is a worldwide problem that has been almost completely covered up. And I'm asking you to totally boycott football, whether it's high school, college, or the NFL. Don't have anything to do with them. Don't spend any money. Let the NFL go bankrupt. Let them close up for the evil that they are. Now, I'm not really talking about the players, although more and more players are learning about the damage that can happen from concussions. And, excuse me, and the NFL has put in some new rules about using your helmet, and that's good. They didn't do it willingly. They did it because of pressure about the concussions. They're not willingly doing this. We forced them to do this by telling the truth. Tell your family about CTE. Tell your friends. Tell the coaches at school if you're a student. Tell your bosses and coworkers and spread the word. There are millions and millions of Americans walking around committing crimes, beating, fights, knives, gunshots, suicide, stabbings, on and on and on because of CTE. That is what is going on, especially in the USA and also other countries of the world too. And this has been covered up. I would like to say, before I say goodbye, that all boxers have CTE. I'm telling you, you can go on YouTube and you can watch videos of professional boxers totally losing control here in Las Vegas on the Strip. Just absolutely, totally losing control. Look at the problems that the boxers have had. How many boxers have committed suicide like Alexis Arguello and many others? How many are invalids? How many get Alzheimer's? What happened to Muhammad Ali? This is CTE. That's what this is. Spread the word, please. As I say goodbye, the NFL players, football players in the USA, high school, college, all boxers, wrestlers, and a portion of hockey players are losing their minds. Not demonically per se, but because of head trauma. The NFL is nothing more than a mafia-run corporation. Football is a mindless game of extreme head trauma, physical trauma, body trauma, and the devastation it leaves behind are wives and children, moms and dads, girlfriends who have to sit there and try to pick up the pieces as the NFL player or the college player's life falls completely apart. And the NFL has covered this up on purpose so these owners could keep making the millions of dollars that they do every Sunday. And they're making this money. This is blood money. They're making it off little children playing football at the parks. They're making it off the high school football players, the college players, and then the NFL players. Okay, praise God. Spread the word, please.